opponent stated that with gun control, that the burden of the court would just simply alleviate itself because there is just less to report. That is not simply the case, because as of right now, the courts are still in trouble, even though gun laws are still increasing in California. As she stated, that in one of the reports, the Brady campaign found that California has probably the strictest gun laws in the country, but it's still not a safe state. As I found here in this article by the LA Times, how crime has actually risen in California over the last 3 years. Violent crime increased in Los Angeles for the 3rd straight year as police tried to stem a rash of homicides and gang-related shootings while dealing with growing homeless population. And what she stated is right, that continuing to pass gun control laws should make the state safer. Why hasn't it? Also the fact that they state that with gun control that more gun-related violence and other things of that nature has fallen off. While it is seen in this article done by Harvard, they talk about how Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy found that murder rates do not wane because of gun control. Rather, that the determinants of murder and suicide are basic social, economic, and cultural factors, not the prevalence of some form of deadly mechanism. They go on to talk about how, but if we do look now at the correlation, it seems to me that the key question should focus on state total homicide rates, or perhaps for a reason that is described below, total intentional homicide plus accidental gun death rates. As it turns out that there is essentially zero correlation between these numbers and state gun laws. Next I'm going to refute the self-defense thing where I pre-stated how it is seen how, from what I found, what a former president incited, or what a former president stated to research, how that research found the exact opposite of what people usually find is here. One of the reasons I found is that for most of the reports where it's talking about how self-defense is actually low, it's mainly that they look at news reports, because news reports are the easiest thing to find on how to actually count how to count statistics and such. In a book written by Clayton Kramer and David Burnett, they openly admit the actual number of cases is much higher because many of the instances are simply not covered by the media. Many defensive gun uses never make the news. After all, man scares away burglar, no shots fired is not particularly newsworthy. They continue to talk about how the underreported defensive gun use is because cases involving justifiable weapons use often are dropped. CLEC estimates of defensive gun use incidents to be as high as 2.5 million a year, though the Federal Crime Survey puts the figure at just about 100,000. And going back to the courts, it talks about how they said that gun control would alleviate them, but that's not how causation works. Just because you take away something doesn't mean that it's going to be reduced. Because the courts still have the problem of being over backlogged. An example being presiding Judge David Wesley that presides over LA County. He talks about how because of all the cutbacks, that the result of all of this is delays and backlogs. I have long lines all over the county. Another example being about how defense lawyer Brendan Atwood talks about how you can only get 30 seconds of court's time instead of how it usually used to be 6 or 7 minutes. And that is it.